Hello, my name is Frank Norby. I am a son of Charles Norby. My dad passed away in 1996 while he was pursuing justice against the supermarket chain who defrauded and cheated him back in 1973. In 1989, the owners of the supermarket chain, along with Chuck Collins, published a fraudulent history book boasting about its success. After my dad read their history book, in 1992, he wrote his own book called Raley's Exposed: Who on Earth Saved Raley's? This is the true story on how Raley's became successful. Today I want to discuss Raley's history book, but before I do that, I want to show you something interesting. This bulletin I'm holding in my hand was being distributed to those who attended Tom Raley's memorial tribute down in downtown Sacramento in the first week of 1992. Inside this bulletin, there's a photograph of Raley's first market in Placerville. He and some employees are standing in front of that store. Below the photograph it says Tom Raley's first market in Placerville, 1953. Tom Raley's first market in Placerville burned down in May of 1943. There could not have been anybody standing in front of this market in 1953 because the store was gone. Raley's didn't return to Placerville until the 1960s. This just shows you how inept this organization is. They couldn't even put the simple fact that this probably was a 1935 photograph of Raley's market in Placerville. Anyway, I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Just the nonsense that goes in with this company. Now, in Raley's history book, there was a section called Memories, where employees would submit their memories of Tom Raley. On page 133 and 134, Chuck Collins submits two memories of Tom Raley. And I'm going to read those to you right now. Good salesmen are easily sold, and Tom Raley is one of good best salesmen who ever lived. That's how it's written. But like all good horse traders, he could never resist a chance to make a deal. One day, just for a joke, a friend of his sent a couple of inventors over to see Raley. A pair of pigeon hunters with a deal of a lifetime. The pair showed up at Raley's office, one lugging a heavy contraption with rollers in it, the other dangling a fully feathered duck from each hand. Frank McMinn and I went in to watch the demonstration. We were greeted by the sound of a machine and the sight of a duck carcass being rolled back and forth in the machine as a blizzard of duck feathers floated through Raley's office. A duck plucker, the inventors. Far from thinking he was being kidded, Raley was delighted. Housewives will love it, he said. No more hand-cleaning ducks, he enthused, forgetting that relatively few housewives list duck cleaning among their daily chores. McMinn concealed his amusement. I couldn't conceal mine, so I left the room. After he calmed down a bit, he returned to Raley's office, supposing that by now the duck plucker peddlers were gone. Mr. Raley, I said, I think this machine is really a pigeon plucker, and you were the chosen pigeon. Only then did it occur to Raley that he had been had. And only then did he agree it probably wouldn't be a good idea to order a truckload of these wondrous new household appliances. Chuck Collins really loved those stories about people being conned and fooled and having the wool pulled over their eyes, just like he did with my dad. And here's the second story. Another time, Raley got a call from a friend in St. Louis, Missouri, with the greatest deal he, the friend, had ever seen. The greatest deal he'd ever seen was a warehouse full of thousands of pairs of brass cavalry spurs. Horses were out, motorized vehicles were in, and you can't start an army truck with a dig of your spurs. The spurs could be bought for a song and a few bucks. His friend had the song, Raley had the bucks. It was agreed. Raley would sell the spurs in his stores, and they'd split the profits. There ought to be a million creative ways to use brass spurs, Raley thought. He could hardly wait for them to arrive. The spurs arrived and arrived and arrived, case after case, spurs by the thousands. Rayleigh put them in his stores and discovered that while there may be a million creative uses for spurs when you aren't on horseback, few of his customers could think of one. Drug center managers competed to see who would come up with the most innovative merchandising and creative uses for spurs. They weren't too successful. A few sold as oarlocks, some went for gun racks. The rest of the shipment was sold for scrap. As Rayleigh always says, timing is everything. This particular bit of timing was off by 100 years. Chuck Collins, president of Rayleigh's. Wow, what a memory to show that Tom Rayleigh was just a fool. Chuck Collins had an opportunity to submit 2 good memories of Tom Rayleigh, and what did he choose? One where he's being conned by some salesmen, and the other where he's being fooled, being stupid. This is the kind of stuff that Chuck Collins liked to see happen to people. Them being stupid and being conned. Although you don't see any memories in this history book of how stupid he was when Charles Nerby was hired in 1973. You don't see the stories about how he was paying suppliers, dishonest suppliers, thousands of dollars weekly on dishonest invoices where he had no clue that he was being cheated. You won't find those memories in this history book. And also, I want to submit or tell you about a memory that Joyce Rady Teal submitted. And here's what it says. You could never top my dad as a salesman. He was a real mule trader. I remember when customers would buy meat and then come back and tell him it was tough. His first question would be, did you put an onion in with it? If the reply was no, he'd say, aha, you should have added an onion. But if the customer said yes, he'd nod his head and say, that's your problem. You shouldn't have cooked it with an onion. What nonsense. Anyway, I wanted to share those memories that were submitted by Chuck Collins and his daughter Joyce Rady Teal about the great Tom Rayleigh. I'm going to go further into this history book and share other things about it to show you this was probably the stupidest book ever written by a supposedly professional supermarket chain. You can find this book at the county library, unbelievably. It's a book of lies, and I'm going to go over those lies in the next coming weeks. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to this, and you have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.
There was so much theft within the Rady stores that it was impossible for them to stay in business. If you just consider the fact that more than 20 major suppliers were cheating Rady's every day of the week, you can't find a single grocer anywhere that would tell you that Rady's could stay in business. I haven't told you about the deli supplier who was cheating Rady's for thousands of dollars weekly and then sat in Rady's office every Monday morning waiting for a check because he didn't trust Rady's. This is a true statement. Rady's had to open all of the store's reports for the week and take out all of the deli invoices and add them up and make a checkout. This deli company had been doing this for years, and I added up more than $79,000 that Rady's had been cheated out of in the few months that I could find invoices for. I gave Collins the proof of these thefts. About a week later, I asked Collins if he had collected restitution from the deli firm, and he acted a little funny when he told me that Tom Rady told him to forget the restitution because this was an old supplier that had helped him out over the years. I didn't believe this for a minute. I believed that Collins was so embarrassed for having paid these supplier invoices month after month after month for year after year after year that he just simply didn't tell Tom Rayleigh about my catching this supplier. I believe that Charles Collins took credit for catching this supplier and also took credit for many of my accomplishments while I was working for Rayleigh's.